Secretary are to implement good tax policy with particular emphasis on policies that will promote job growth, which is what we're all talking about, deliver good customer service to individuals and businesses, operate the department efficiently and effectively, and maintain a positive work environment. Secretary Chandler has nearly 2 decades of experience in the executive and legislative branches of government. He previously served as the Wisconsin Department of Revenue Secretary from 2001 to 2003 and as Wisconsin State Budget Director from 1987 to 2001. In addition to his government service, he headed his own public policy and government relations consulting firm in Madison from 2003 to 2010 and practiced law in Milwaukee for 5 years in the 1980s. Secretary Chandler holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in government from Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin, and a law degree from the University of Chicago Law School. He lives in Madison with his wife and twin daughters. Please welcome Secretary Chandler. Thank you. Great. Yeah. Awesome. Do you want me to handle it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. And I'll just speak from here. I assume everybody can hear me okay back there. Thanks for the opportunity to meet with you today, and I was really interested to hear the tail end of that previous discussion because I've been traveling around the state a lot, meeting with chambers of commerce, Rotary clubs, individual businesses, and so forth, and I certainly hear a lot about workforce concerns and some of the things that are being talked about, and I think there's some good things happening around the state, and I'll say a little bit more about that as I go through my remarks. But certainly sounds like some good stuff taking place here. But today I thought I'll obviously focus, since I'm from the Department of Revenue, I'll focus on tax and revenue issues, but talk about some other issues that affect the state's business climate as well, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time for question and answers. So I thought I'd just cover a little bit about the things we're doing to operate the Department of Revenue, but then really focus on some of our tax initiatives that are designed to help with job creation, and then talk a little bit about property taxes and the state budget. I joke that I know that there's sometimes some skepticism when people see somebody from the Department of Revenue, and I've heard that there's a rumor out there that people think we have a secret motto, which is, we've got what it takes to take what you've got. But I'm trying to tell people that we're trying to take a little more positive, a little more user-friendly attitude towards things, and I've sort of said that my vision for the Department of Revenue is we want to try to make tax paying less taxing, and I use that in several senses. We want to try to work to reduce the tax burden in Wisconsin. We want to make the tax paying process less stressful. We know that paying taxes is never going to be anybody's favorite thing to do, but if we can make it a little easier, that will make it less taxing, and it'll be better for people. And finally, we're operating with fewer tax resources, so we're trying to do things in a less taxing way from that point of view. But Ann talked about the goals I've outlined that help support that vision. Number one, promote good tax policy, and we want to particularly emphasize things that will help with job creation, as well as our traditional mission of making sure we've got a tax code that's fair, and we're assuring tax fairness by helping people understand their obligations and assuring those who are paying taxes that everybody else is meeting their obligations as well. So goal number one is good tax policy. Goal number two is to provide good customer service to businesses and individuals. Goal number three is to operate efficiently. As I said, we have a budget this year in terms of operating the agency that's less than it was last year. That's true of almost every state agency. And obviously budgets are constrained at all of your companies. If you look at nonprofit organizations, local governments, you know, we live in an era when resources are limited, so we've got to operate efficiently. And then goal number four is to promote a positive work environment. We want to give our employees the tools and training they need to do the job, and we want to create an environment where employees are encouraged to offer suggestions about how we can improve how we do things. So we want to just create an environment where they have the training they need to do a good job, and they're encouraged to suggest better ways for us to do our work. But our top goal really is right now to focus on job creation. So I'll talk in some detail about that. And we've handed out the brochures. Those list some of the key tax incentives for businesses that we have. Some of them are long-standing, some of them have been put in place in the last year and a half, and if anybody is interested in further detail on any of these, you can go to our website. We've had some long-standing incentives in place that are intended to help create a good tax climate for businesses, a research and development income tax credit, a property tax exemption for manufacturing, machinery, and equipment. About 8 years ago, the state created an angel investment credit, which was meant to give a tax credit to people who invest in startup companies that meet certain criteria, companies that are going to grow rapidly, a bipartisan initiative from the legislative session in '03 and '04. So we've had a number of things in place that we think help create a good tax climate for businesses, but we've done a lot of things in the last year and a half to build on those previous incentives. But maybe before I talk about some of the tax things, I'll just talk a little bit about the factors in general that go into making up a good business climate in the state. And I do this because I found that if I just go out and talk about tax incentives and tax policy, people will say, well, you know, businesses are interested in a lot more than just the tax climate in the state. And we're very well aware of that. And as I talk to businesses and ask them what kinds of things are important to you when you're deciding where to do business, you get a list of a number of things. And often workforce is at the top of the list. Having a well-trained, hard-working workforce is important. The education system is high on the list. Taxes often are very high on the list, both reasonable tax burden and competitive tax structure. The regulatory climate is important. Infrastructure is important, roads, energy, communications, and so forth. General quality of life is important to people, and the quality of government services. All of those things are things that businesses take into account and that they comment on when they're talking about the business climate. Traditionally, Wisconsin has gotten good marks for having an outstanding workforce and a good education system. Traditionally, we haven't ranked as well when it comes to taxes or to regulations. Businesses have said our taxes are too high, and in some areas we haven't been competitive with other states. We've had some irritants that have worked to our disadvantage. And businesses have commented on regulations, that the regulatory process, just getting permits or dealing with regulatory agencies, isn't as easy here as it is in other states. And it's often not necessarily the substance of the regulations, but just the regulatory process. So looking at the overall picture, we know we need to do things to improve our tax climate and to keep maintaining our advantage over other states in areas like workforce and education. But certainly in the tax area, we know we've got work to do, and we think we've made a lot of progress in the last year and a half. So I just want to highlight a few things that we put in place throughout the course of 2011, throughout the legislative sessions in 2011, that we think have really improved our tax climate for businesses. And I'll really emphasize two major initiatives that we put in place. One is a new manufacturing and agriculture tax credit, and it's going to start phasing in 2013, be phased in over a 4-year period. By 2016, when it's fully phased in, we'll be providing a credit of 7.5% against the taxes that are imposed on income from manufacturing and agriculture activities that take place in the state of Wisconsin. It's a significant credit. Our corporate income tax rate is 7.9%, so you can see that a 7.5% credit against that 7.9% tax rate will have a significant impact. It's for manufacturing and agriculture activities that take place here, so if a company is a manufacturing company, has half its operations here, half in some other state, they'll take the credit against the taxes on half of their income that comes from their Wisconsin operations. But the theory behind this is that manufacturing and agriculture have really been historically the twin drivers of Wisconsin's economy. We're one of the two most manufacturing intensive states in the country when measured as a percent of our workforce, along with Indiana. We sort of trade off the top ranking with Indiana. We're obviously historically a very major agricultural state. But those are the sectors that they sell their goods outside the state to a large extent. They bring money into the state, and if the manufacturing and ag sectors are doing well, every other sector will do well. Yeah.
I had read that taxfoundation.org said that Wisconsin is taxing our manufacturing employers a total tax burden of 32%, higher than the national average, 32% higher. So how would this tax credit, how do you see that taking a bite out of that amount?
Yeah, well, I haven't seen that ranking. I'm not sure. That sounds a little high to me in terms of our current ranking, but this will definitely improve it. And again, the rationale is that if manufacturing and ag do well, construction's going to do well, real estate, retail, professional services, hospitality, tourism, and so forth. But the point is, we want to maintain a healthy manufacturing sector. And I think this will move us from a point where we're sort of at the national average in terms of taxes on manufacturing, or maybe a little above, depending on which study you look at, to a place where we can say we're significantly better